Hey gang, what's going on? I am Chris Vanderkay. If you're here, you probably know who I am already. If you don't know who I am, I'll just tell you real quick. I am a filmmaker, found footage filmmaker. I was the writer, director, and actor who starred in and directed and wrote the film Ask, which is kind of an influencer meets cosmic horror found footage film that you can see streaming. You can see it on Tubi, you can see it on Fossum, or you can rent it on Amazon or POV Horror. You can. I'm also the writer and director of a new documentary series called Found Footage Finds, which is currently airing right now on Found TV. It's the only place it's airing. It's exclusive for the month of June on Found TV, which is awesome. If you don't have that platform, I highly recommend going and getting a membership because you can get a paid one with no ads, but they also have an ad supported version like with Tubi, where you could just watch the films with ad interruptions. You don't have to pay for it, so it's really awesome, and they're a great platform. Only have found footage movies on there, but that is where Found Footage Finds is running right now, which is a documentary series shot in found footage style, and it's all about your favorite found footage films. Each episode is about a single subgenre of found footage. And so two episodes are out currently. They came out just this past Wednesday. Talk about them in a little bit more detail after we dive in here in a few minutes. But yeah, so those are the two big things that I've directed. I also, if there's anybody who's going to be watching who is actually going to be in the Houston area, you can actually catch Ask on the big screen. It's going to be playing at the historic River Oaks Theater in Houston on Saturday, June 21st. So it's going to be pretty cool. I actually, unfortunately, am not going to be able to get down there myself, but the producer of the film, Preston Fossil, is going to be on hand. And more than that, I think what's exciting is the movie, the theater where the movie is being shown, we're going to be shooting some footage. And so we're going to be shooting footage in the theater of people who are watching the film. And if you're part of the audience, you may end up in some of that B-roll, which is going to be in another project that I'm working on, which I maybe will tell you about a little bit later. But for right now, I will keep it secret, and we'll maybe get to it. But so that is who I am. I wanted to just take this opportunity to let anybody ask any questions that they might have about either thing, about the movie, about the TV show, any questions that you might have just about actually found footage filmmaking in general, because I am something of a kind of a, I don't know what you'd call it. I guess I'm kind of a nerd when it comes to curating found footage movies. I've been following found footage for 15 years now, for a very long time. So I've been watching a lot of titles, but I've also been logging them, keeping track of them, sharing them with people, making recommendations. I have a list on Letterboxd that's, I want to say it's almost 1,900 titles of found footage or fake documentary movies. So I just know a lot about them and I love them. So feel free to share anything that you want. You can go ahead and post comments in the chat or with any questions you have or anything like that, and then I will feel free to answer those and everything. So I did want to just say, I wanted to mention that a couple of people were not going to be able to make it to the live today, but they had some questions that they wanted to share, and so I wanted to share the questions that they had and then answer those, and then we can actually, if there's anything that you guys want to ask off of those or whatever, that's fine. But I just wanted to start there with any questions that I got from people who were not going to be able to make it. So first thing I'm going to do is, let's see, this question was, okay, so this is an easy one. I'll start with a softball. They said, what is the next episode of Found Footage Finds, or what's the next topic that is going to be on an episode of Found Footage Finds? So that's an easy one, because the next topic is actually going to be zombies. And that is today's Sunday, so on Wednesday. So in a few days, we're going to be premiering episode 3, which is zombies. And then so the two that have already come out, the first episode was Bigfoot, which premiered on Wednesday, and then Screen Life, which was also premiered on Wednesday. So those two are already there. A lot of fantastic movies that were recommended on there, cool conversation, and then also some really awesome filmmaker interviews. We had about 4 filmmakers per episode talking about their found footage films that fall into these subgenres. So, sorry, Jim just said something. Oh, it has a cinema release. So yes, the movie Ask sort of has a cinema release. By which I mean, I was lucky enough to connect with someone who is willing to screen the movie. It doesn't have, it's not going theatrical in the sense that it's going to appear in a bunch of movie theaters, but it's going to play in Houston, possibly going to be playing in Philadelphia, and we're also looking for a place here in my home state of Florida. So we're doing kind of, I guess they call it like a road show, where you're just finding independent theaters that are willing to play independent films where you don't have to like pay to run it in the theater. You just actually team up with them, they screen it, and then people can come see it. So yes, so it is being released at least to one place, hopefully to two or three. Um, hey Ross, he said, "How's it going, man?" I'm gonna say it's good. For I don't have any point of comparison. This is the first live video I've ever done on Facebook, so I'm going to say it's good because there are people talking to me, so I'm assuming I did it right. But thank you for asking. Oh, Jim asked, "How did you get into filmmaking?" So that's an interesting story, I guess. Well, I think it's interesting because it happened to me. We'll find out if it's actually interesting. But I've been writing for years. I've been a screenwriter since the mid 2000s. In fact, I wrote a script, a western, that became a movie, a Hallmark Movie Channel original film, back in 2012, 2014. I can't even remember now. But someone bought the script and then they went off and they made it, and it premiered as a Hallmark Movie Channel movie, which was cool. But it was rewritten. I didn't really like the final product, and ultimately had no control over it. And so I have spent many years since then as a struggling screenwriter trying to get stuff made, because I don't have enough money to make my own movies. And then I finally decided, well, if somebody's going to screw up my stuff anyway, it might as well go ahead and be me. At least then I'll have the credit along with the blame. So I decided I was going to make my own feature, and I was just trying to figure out what that would be. And then I just married my love of found footage to my background as a screenwriter. And so I just decided to write very small scale stuff that I could direct myself. So that's kind of how I became a filmmaker. Let's see. So James asked, he said, "This one's for the audience. What kind of equipment do you need to get started making found footage?" Here, I'll show you. This is my cell phone. This is the phone that if any of you have watched an episode of Found Footage Finds, this is what I made it on. So I know that sounds like, "Oh, you've got a camera in your pocket." Like everybody says that, but like I literally proved it. I went out and shot 5 episodes of a television show that is now airing on Found TV and will hopefully be in other places as well. But I did all of that with the cell phone that was in my pocket. And the reason that I did it, I probably could have upgraded to a fancier camera from Ask to Found Footage Finds. But my goal is, whenever it's possible for me to shoot with something like this, I try to do it because I want to lead by example. The example being, like, if you want to make something, don't let something like equipment be the reason to stop you. Don't let that be the thing that stands in the way between you and having a completed film. Especially in found footage, audiences, you guys, me, the people that love found footage, we don't watch a movie and go, "Well, I would have liked this better if he had shot this on a Sony whatever the hell instead of his cell phone." Because the goal of found footage is for it to look real. So it's never going to look more real than if I'm making a movie about somebody shooting on a cell phone and I actually shoot it with my cell phone. So that was sort of my goal in shooting it with that stuff. And it just makes it achievable. You watch it and you go, "Well, shit, if this guy can do it, of course I can do it," and that's sort of my goal. I want you guys to feel like you can just go do it. Let's see. Fionn. Hey, Fionn. What's going on? Fionn is in the chat. He's the director or the co-director of a movie called Black Daruma, which, if you haven't seen it, is awesome. It's one of the most unique perspectives I've seen on found footage, like in the way that what you're seeing the world through, the lens you're seeing the world through, is a very cool idea. But anyway, so he said, "What was the inspiration behind the movie Ask? And what's your process behind coming up with ideas for movies in general?" Okay, so this is like the big one. This is like the $24,000 question for people who want to go make found footage movies. For me, the inspiration was easy. Well, not easy, but it was very clear to me. If you've seen the movie, you know about these guys. These are my front 6 teeth. They're much nicer than they used to look about a year and a half ago. My teeth were in really bad shape, and I hadn't been able to go to the dentist for years. They were just in terrible shape. I finally got a job with insurance so I could get my teeth fixed. And I found out that it was going to be happening. I was going to get the surgery in like late December, early January. And then just one day I would have 6 brand new, nice, shiny teeth in the front of my mouth. And so I started thinking, I don't really take pictures of myself in life or anything, but this seemed like a big thing in my life. Like I was suddenly going to change to, like, instead of never smiling because I don't want people to see my teeth, to a point where I'm going to have nice teeth. And I didn't know what to do with that. And then I thought, well, maybe I can build a story around that somehow. What's an interesting way to tell a story? Probably a horror story of some sort, where like a guy has bad teeth and then suddenly just wakes up one day with brand new, nice new teeth, And so that was just the kernel of the idea. I built backwards from there, and I said, well, what has to transpire? What do I have to shoot between now and December? I think it was like mid-November when I thought of this. It's like, what all the stuff do I have to shoot for the first part of the movie? And then I'll get the surgery, get the new teeth, and then the second half of the movie I'll shoot after I have the new teeth. And that was basically the entire kernel for the making of the film, was the actual dental surgery that I was going to get. So everything just grew from there, and I had to just figure out the story around it. And then we may talk about this a little bit, so I might put a pin in the second part, which is what's the process behind coming up with ideas, because I think we'll probably talk about that as I answer other questions. But thank you for asking that, Fiona. Let's see. So Sarah said, what's the theme for the next episode? I mentioned it briefly earlier, but the next episode is zombies. So episode 3 is zombies. And actually, you know what? Here's what I'm going to say. I'm just going to tell you, I haven't told anybody else what all 5 of the episodes of the season are going to be. I think Found TV may have announced it somewhere, I don't know. But I haven't told anybody else, but I'm going to tell you guys. I'm going to make this an exclusive just to this group, because you guys have been hugely supportive to me for the movie and the show. All 5 episodes. The 2 that are out, Bigfoot and Screen Life, are already out. Episode 3 coming up this Wednesday is Zombies. The week after that is Into the Woods. And then the final one, Into the Woods, by the way, is, I know it's not really a genre, but these are all the movies that take place in the woods, because there's just a ton of them. Post Blair Witch Project, everybody ran into the woods and made a movie, and so we talk a lot about that sort of subgenre or subcategory. And then the final episode of the season is the one I hadn't told anybody about, and I'm telling you guys, is reality TV and newscasts. And that one's a lot of fun, because that's a very specific subcategory of film that goes all the way back to let's see, Ghost Watch, probably in '92, was maybe one of the first big ones of that category. So those are the episodes for the rest of the season. So feel free to check them out every Wednesday when they come out. It would be great if you supported them as they premiered, because that helps Found to show the numbers are very popular for the show, and that'll obviously help me to know whether or not there's enough of an audience to be able to do a season 2. So fingers crossed. Let's see. Next up, what is this? Love the show. Please make more episodes. I promise you that I want to. What I can tell you is that as long as people show up to watch it, with numbers big enough to warrant me being able to go out and shoot the episodes, I'll keep making them. I already have a season 2 planned. I should say this, because people have already said to me when they find out what the episodes are, they're like, wait, you didn't do a paranormal investigations one? Or you didn't do an aliens one? Or you didn't do a serial killers one? I have plans for all of those subgenres over subsequent seasons. I'm just one guy, so I can only do about 5 episodes a season, but I do absolutely intend on covering whatever your favorite subgenre of found footage movie is. I promise you that I have intentions to cover it. So, but yeah, that is my goal. I will literally drive this thing into the ground. I will make them until somebody kicks me off the internet. So I will keep producing them. Jim said it's certainly the most accessible form of filmmaking out there. Yes, 100%. Found footage. In fact, I end every episode of Found Footage Finds by saying, today's found footage fan is tomorrow's found footage filmmaker. Because I think that's true. Most people don't just go make a found footage movie. They watch a bunch of them. They love them, and they want to experience being on both sides of the camera, not just watching but also creating. So I agree. It's absolutely the most accessible form of filmmaking, and it sort of democratizes the industry in some ways, right? Like anybody is allowed to do that because the threshold is low. And yes, of course, you're going to get some movies that aren't great because of that, but it also means everybody has equal opportunity to do it, Like, I've mentioned this before, but like I'm a straight white dude, like the world is my oyster. I have advantages a lot of people don't. But the good thing about found footage is like anybody else that has the same opportunity as me to make a movie, no matter what your financial situation is or your walk in life or any of that kind of stuff. You have the opportunity to do it too, and that, for me, that's powerful. I hope you find it inspiring, and that if you wanted to make something, that you would just do what I did and just grab the camera and go shoot something yourself. So fingers crossed that there's at least a couple of people I'm talking to today that are maybe inspired to do that. Let's see. I think it's cool you used real life experiences for your film. Yeah, so that wasn't even the only one. That was just the main one, the thing about my teeth. There was a ton of other things that I also folded in from my real life. Some of the footage in the movie, there's a scene where I go to a convention where I'm teaching attorneys how to do marketing. I was actually at an event where I was teaching attorneys how to do marketing, and I just shot footage at the place where it was all happening. They didn't even know. Like, there's a scene where you can see the cameras at a low angle pointed up at my face. That is because I was actually in front of a group of attorneys teaching at the moment that I started recording that, because I thought, when is this ever going to look more realistic than when I'm actually doing it? So I just shot it literally in the moment that it was happening. So not necessarily suggesting that you secretly make a movie in the middle of your job. I'm just saying it happened to work out good for me at that moment. Let's see. Mike said, is there a possibility of a sequel to Ask? Seemed like there was an opening to tell the police AV guy story. Well, so here's what I'm going to tell you, but that there absolutely are plans for a sequel to Ask. And I can tell you a couple of things about it. I mentioned earlier that there's a screening happening in Houston on June 21st. The footage that is going to be shot at the theater, for anybody who's there, we're going to be shooting some B-roll. I won't be there, but the producer friend of mine, Preston, will be there. That footage is being shot to be used in the sequel film. So if that gives you an answer to your question, it's not just a possibility. We are in heavy sort of pre-production on the potential to make this thing. There's just a couple of things that have to happen in real life in order for us to be able to make it. But yes, there will be a sequel, and I can tell you, because a ton of people have asked me this, the second question after is there going to be a sequel to Ask is, are you going to be in it? Because for anybody who has seen the ending, there is reason to believe I might not be in it, so I could understand. But yes, I will also be returning in the film, playing the same character I played in the first one, which is me, named after me. So, but yes, I will be back in the second film. So, let's see, what else we got here. Jump back up. Just watched the Bigfoot episode. Really impressed. What a great show. Episode on doll horror, perhaps. Okay, I get what you're doing, Fiona. Yes, so I love doll horror, and one of the good things about found footage films is that almost any subgenre that has like 1 or 2 titles probably has like 10 or 12 titles, because they get produced so much, because it's easier for people to make them. You get more of them. Sometimes they're just copycat movies, but sometimes you just get inspired. Like the Into the Woods subgenre, there's a ton of those. So I would imagine at this point there probably are enough doll horror found footage films. I can think of 3 off the top of my head, and I haven't even done any research. So I think we're probably safe to be able to do that. And yes, if your next question, Fiona, was going to be, are you going to cover my movie? I will not only cover your movie, but I will probably have you come on the show, because we'd like to have filmmaker interviews in those episodes. So for sure we would do that. Let's see. Oh, you know what? Actually, I mentioned earlier that some people had posted questions. They were not going to be able to be on the call earlier, and so they posted questions. They're going to watch back later. So I just wanted to pull a couple of these real quick and just mention them before I forget. I think, actually, Nicole, you know what? You are here, but I'm going to answer the question that you asked me earlier so that I don't forget it. I don't want to get it lost. You had actually said, how might aspiring actors get a shot at being in a found footage or any movie? And then you said, how people sing in the shower? I act in the shower. So that's my honest level of experience, which I totally get that. That's hilarious. Well, so here's what I can tell you. It's going to be a terrible but also great answer at the same time. You may have noticed that I played the lead role in the film I was in. Aside from that role and appearing in found footage finds, I'm not really an actor. Or at least I like acting, but I've not really done it, right? I would have been interested in doing it, but it can be discouraging to try and be a performer. There's a reason why the first performance of mine is in my own movie, and it's because it's expensive and it's time consuming and it's difficult to just be able to have the opportunity to be in a film that you're not making yourself, because you have to rely on them thinking you're right, them being able to maybe foot the bill if it's not filming near your house, or you having to be able to pay to be able to be wherever it's happening. That's tough. It's very hard. I think it's in some ways it's harder to be just an actor than it is to do what I do, which is to write and direct and then also appear in the projects. So my answer to you, and this is the part that kind of sucks, but also I hope is a little bit freeing, is that the only opportunity, or I would say the best opportunity you're ever going to get, is the one that you create for yourself. So in your case, if you want to be an actor, there are a few different ways that you could go about it, which is creating some sort of project you can act in, whether it be, if there are theater venues where you could create something for the stage. Or my advice would be, because it's what I did, is to come up with an idea for a found footage film that you could appear in. And the good thing about shooting a found footage movie is you don't have to be very technically savvy. I mean, literally, you use one of these every day, just like I do. I shot a movie. It's not the most beautiful thing in the world. It costs less than $250 for me to make it. Considerably less than $250, actually, because half that money that is technically part of the budget was what I spent to enter it in film festivals. So I made it for relatively little money, and the found footage audience is super supportive in finding movies. If they like them, they'll watch them, they'll share them. And so in some ways, that might be the best avenue that you have for getting an acting opportunity, is creating that acting opportunity for yourself. In the same way that, I had that movie come out, in 2012, that Western that I wrote that premiered on the Hallmark Movie Channel, and then nothing happened for over a decade. I kept trying to get writing gigs, and I couldn't find anybody who wanted to make my stuff. And I finally just said, well, I can't wait for anybody else. So I just got to make stuff myself. And that's what I'm going to do. And I did, and found footage fans have shown up. They've been awesome. They've shared the word. It ended up, like, so many people watched it on Tubi that it's now in the recommends. So it's like getting recommended to other people, which is awesome. So, and I'll also tell you, I post in the group all the time. If there are people here who want to make a project of their own, you can feel free to tag me and stuff. I'm help you brainstorm, figure out what's an idea for a project that fits your budget and the things that you have at your disposal and that sort of thing. So that would be my advice. Let's see. So Matt Joseph said, I was stunned how many Screen Life films there were. Face to Face yesterday really left a mark on me today. Yeah, so that's a good point. So first of all, Screen Life is one of my favorite genres in found footage, or categories in found footage. And the reason is because Screen Life movies look like the way that we communicate with each other now. And so watching a movie that's shot like that taps into a part of our brain that makes it feel familiar and like we're interacting with it, because it's communicating with us the way that we communicate with the rest of the world, especially sort of like post-pandemic. So many people work from home, they work through Zoom calls, that kind of stuff. So it's awesome to see reflected in film so quickly everybody's lived experience, and that's why I like Screen Life so much. But yes, you're right. The movie Face to Face, while it's not strictly a horror film, the reason I included it is because it is a very powerful film. It is a Screen Life movie, and I want the show to mostly be, I think I said like 90% horror titles. But I every once in a while I want to pepper in something else that's an interesting experience that people would like to, that I think horror fans would get something from, even if it's not strictly a horror movie. So that's why I drop in titles like that. So I'm really glad that you liked it, Matt. So let's see. Joe said, do you feel guerrilla filmmaking is pretty much found footage? Well, so I use the word big tent when I use the term found footage, because there isn't really one term that anybody uses to mean movies shot with a camera that takes place inside the story, right? Like what I call an in-world camera. All that means is that whatever movie is being you're watching is being seen through the eye of a camera that takes place in the story. So if it's a fake documentary or it's found footage, those all kind of fall under, I use the term found footage, but I include all of them together because there isn't really a better term that describes all of them. In-world camera, I guess, would be the best. But your question, guerrilla filmmaking guerrilla filmmaking, you can shoot a movie that's traditional, like narrative style, that doesn't look like it's not filmed as if it's being filmed on a real camera. You can do those guerrilla style. There are actually many movies that are shot that way that aren't technically found footage or documentary, and I like those a lot, but I would definitely consider them a different kind of a thing. So like guerrilla filmmaking style, or what they call cinema verite, those are like things that describe either the way something is filmed or the way that it looks, but not necessarily like with found footage. It's actually a conceit of this project is as if it is being filmed inside the world, and I think that's kind of what separates found footage from the rest of it. Yeah, so Joe said it. Yeah, you know what, Joe? You said it much more concisely than I did. See, the camera is an actual actor in the film, or an actual participant in the film, right? Like, you could shoot a guerrilla-style film, but if no one ever looks at or addresses the camera, or there's no interaction that let you know that they're aware that they're being filmed, then it doesn't really count as a found footage or fake documentary-style film. I guess that's the way I would describe it. So, let me see. So, feel free to drop any other questions you might have. I want to pull up the last. There was somebody else that asked a question, too. Manda Monroe, I don't know if they're in here, but Manda Monroe asked, where did you originally submit your movie and what got it noticed? So I'm assuming she's not in, so she can't follow up, but I'm assuming when she says submit, she meant submit to, like, for distribution, I assume. I only ever submitted it to one place for distribution. I actually didn't have any idea what I was going to do. I was going to enter at some film festivals and then just sort of cross my fingers. And I don't know if I mentioned, I entered it in 3 or 4 film festivals when it was done, was rejected from all 4 of them. The Unnamed Footage Festival, which I thought was going to be a big one because they do almost all found footage stuff, they said no. Chattanooga Film Festival, a couple of other places. So I was rejected from all of those festivals, which was kind of a bummer. It was a little disheartening. But what ended up happening is A friend of mine, Mary Beth McAndrews, who is now the editor-in-chief of Dread Central, which is an awesome horror website. If you don't go there, you really should. She runs an awesome site there. We've been friends for many years, since back when both of us were sort of struggling writers. Well, so she offered very kindly to come on board as a producer after the movie was finished to help me find a home for it. And so she was a judge at the Unnamed Footage Festival, and she met the guy who runs POV Horror there. POV Horror, I almost guarantee you've seen the opening clip that shows POV Horror on a dozen movies if you've watched them on Tubi. It's like a camera running through the woods and it falls over, and then POV in big red print pops up on the screen. They've done a ton of found footage movies. In fact, that's all they do. And she had met him when they were doing the circuit to do judging for the Unnamed Footage Festival. And so she mentioned the movie, and somehow he had seen it. Maybe he was on the screening board for the festival or something, but he knew what it was. And he was like, yeah, absolutely, we'll put that out. So I didn't really have to submit to many places in order to find a home for it. But another thing I will tell you is that nowadays you don't really need to find a distributor if you're willing to do a little bit of work yourself to self-distribute. Especially when you make a movie on such a small budget. You can actually work through a place like Film Hub, and you can submit your movie through there, and they will submit to all of these venues. They'll submit it to Tubi, to Amazon Prime, to all these places, and those places choose whether or not they want to put it on their platform. So you don't really have control over who will say yes, but you have access to be able to put the film there yourself. So if you're willing to do that little bit of extra work, then that's pretty cool, because it means that you can be your own distributor. You can get the movie out on platforms, and then once it gets out there, then it just becomes your job to come do live video Q&As in your found footage Facebook group to tell everybody about it so they go watch it. But that's an option. And so, yeah, so Manda, that's what I would tell you. That was where I originally submitted the movie. It's the only place I ever submitted it. So, but you don't even have to do that necessarily with your film. Let's see. So Sarah S. brought up, she said, after listening to your episode on the Dark Movies with Friends podcast, awesome podcast about found footage films, by the way. If you haven't listened to it, definitely check it out if you're a podcast listener. She said it was neat to learn how you worked with real life occurrences like the guy being arrested behind you was just right time, right place. Yeah, that was, so I talked about other real life things that happened in the movie earlier. I can't believe I forgot the craziest one, which is there is a scene in the movie where my character is standing outside trying to get some people to pay attention to him. And in the background behind me, a man is being taken out of his car, put in cuffs, and then stuffed into a police car. And in the scene, you come to an understanding that it was because my character had shoplifted from the store, but because cosmically no one's paying attention to me anymore, somebody else got blamed for the things that I stole, and he's being arrested in the parking lot. Well, I wrote that idea on the fly, the idea of someone else being arrested, because when I pulled up to shoot that scene, there was a man being arrested in the parking lot. So I was just like, this is too insane a coincidence for me to not take advantage of from like a production value point of view. So I was just like, all right, well, I'm going to set up the camera really quick. We're going to shoot the scene while they're in the background. And so I shot it. And then I shot the piece that came before it that explains that I had been shoplifting so that it made sense as to why that moment was happening. So literally, that scene was originally just going to be me trying to get people to pay attention to me, nothing happening in the background. But two police cars with their lights on were arresting a man. And I was like, I can't pass that up. I got to put that in there. So that's another reason why making found footage films is a great thing, because of the flexibility that you have. Like, you can, in a second, if you're thinking on your feet, something interesting is happening in the world, you can photograph whatever that is and figure out how to use it in the movie. In fact, there's a clip in the movie where I'm going to a convention, and there's a part where these ducks that are walking by in the front of they're just walking towards the front entrance of this area that I'm going into, and I make a joke about how there's coffee in the lobby, and like I'm talking to the ducks. That was shot 2.5 years before I shot the rest of the movie. It was just a funny thing one day when I was walking to a different event, and I saw ducks in the front area near the lobby. I shot that piece of footage, but because I wasn't in it, it's fit seamlessly, and I could just dump it into this movie. So it's just been sitting on my phone for 2.5 years until I found something I could do with it. So found footage filmmaking can be like that a lot, man. You just gather pieces of things and you don't know where you might use them. I've got a piece of footage on my phone that of a vulture attacking his own reflection in a mirrored window that I know I'm eventually going to use. I have no idea what for, but I'm going to use it eventually. So it's just sitting on the phone, and then someday I'll figure out some purpose for it. But that's kind of what I tell anybody who's thinking about doing a found footage film, is like, work backwards. Don't come up with an idea and then try to figure out how to make it. see what kind of stuff you have, and then see if you can reverse engineer and turn that stuff into a movie. Because then it'll look like all of it is intentional, you know? Like the dental surgery was a thing. The I don't know if, the scene, if you guys have seen it, the movie where there's a scene where I hold up a pillow that has a picture of me and my dog on it, and a pair of socks that has a picture of my dog's face on it. Those weren't things that I spent money on. I would never buy things like that. They're weird and creepy, but they were given to me as gifts when I used to work for an attorney. I worked in the marketing department. And so we would get gifts from all these marketing companies that were trying to get our attention. So they would send you the weirdest gifts. And so, like, those were the gifts that I had. And I was like, I don't know what to do with this. I don't even want to put this out to the trash because it's got my face on it. It seems weird. So anyway, it's just been sitting in boxes. Well, then when I came up with the idea for this story, I was like, I bet I can find a way to fit that into the story so that it's another interesting, weird element that looks like it would have been expensive or complicated to create. But it wasn't. It was just stuff I had, you know. So anyway, I think I went on a bit of a diatribe there. Sorry. But yes, to your point, work in real life occurrences all the time. There's nothing that's going to seem more realistic than real life. So especially in found footage, that can be super effective. So let me see if there's any other questions. Manda had a follow-up question. She said, I'm currently writing a script and I'm new to it, so I would love to know how you managed it. Well, I guess I touched on that a little bit just now, which is like find things in your life that you can utilize and work backwards to build a story. But then the other thing I would say for anybody who's interested in making a movie like this, do me a favor. Actually, this is something I want to do. I'm just curious about. Anybody who's still in the chat here, can you just drop what your favorite found footage movie or movies are in the chat? Because I want to see something. I just want to see which films appeal to you. So like just mention what your favorites are in there. But anyway, while you're doing that, what I'll point out is that you shouldn't get too paralyzed if you're trying to make a found footage movie. Don't get paralyzed by trying to write a script that writes out all the dialogue and every moment that has to happen in the film, because first of all, you'll become paralyzed by the amount of work there is, and is this dialogue right and all that kind of stuff. But also, it locks you into being stuck to have to do that thing, right? It makes it hard to perform. Like if you watched Ask, I did not have a script for Ask. I had 50 bullet points in a document, and that was all I had. In a Google Doc with 50 bullet points of things that needed to happen. I did not write the script. I knew what had to happen in a scene, but I didn't write myself dialogue for anything except for a couple of scenes where I was playing two characters at the same time, and I had to shoot them separate times, so I had to write the dialogue for that. But everywhere else, I knew what was supposed to happen, but I didn't write any of the lines. And the reason was because I knew if I was trying to figure out how to say what I needed to say in the scene, it would feel more realistic. It would feel like it was actually happening in that moment. And that was, for me, would be more effective as a performance, because I'm a new actor. I'm not, I took classes in college and had been in, plays and stuff, but I'm not really an actor. So I knew to get my best performance, it should feel like I'm thinking of it and performing it at the first time. So I did not have a script. I could suggest a similar thing to you. There are a lot of movies that didn't have a specific script for the project that they're working on. So let's see. So what are some titles we got here? Okay, so Horror in the High Desert. That's a good one. That one, actually, I recommend that one to tons of people because I think that's a great example of how to make a movie. Well, that's, first of all, it's sort of a combination of fake documentary or mockumentary and found footage. But also, the first one was pretty low budget. Dutch Marriage made it for very little money. And it was a really effective movie. They really turned the screws. And the thing about that one is there's so much of what works in that movie is not big, elaborate set pieces. It's like quiet scenes, super amount of tension, right? Like it's the vibe that really makes that movie work. And vibe is not something you have to spend money on. It's just something you have to plan for and figure out how to execute. But it doesn't cost a ton of money. So that's a great one. Let's see. Sorry, jumping back up. So Senritsu Kaiki file. I have not actually seen that. So I can't speak to that one, although I'm going to grab my pen and write that down real quick. I apologize for derailing, but anytime I come across one that has mentioned by someone, I mean, I've got a list of 1,800 found footage films on Letterboxd, but anytime someone specifically mentions one that they like, I write it down specially because even though I'm obviously slowly working my way through that list, I always try to prioritize ones that people mention and sound good. Sarah said Exhibit A. So that one, Dom Rotherow directed that one. And actually back when I was going to make found footage finds as a book, I reached out to him. And so he answered some questions about it. He's a very nice guy. We weren't able to arrange an interview with him yet, which is one of the reasons why I didn't do Killers Killers and Cameras for found footage finds, because I did want to talk to Dom if he was going to be available. But that is a really effective one. That's one that's like not supernatural at all. It's very much sort of like a slow descent into madness kind of story, and it's very effective. Definitely worth recommending. Again, not super expensive, not a ton of locations, not a huge cast. So it's another one that feels accomplishable, you know. Classic Blair Witch Project, of course. As Above, So Below. So that's an interesting one. The Dowdle brothers, John, Eric, and Drew Dowdle, I think are their names. They directed As Above, So Below. They also directed Poughkeepsie Tapes, and they also directed Quarantine, which is the remake of Wreck. So they're one of the few teams of filmmakers I can think of that have multiple times made fairly higher budget and effective found footage films continuously. Because often what will happen is somebody makes one, they get more money, and they move up and they sort of move out of the found footage arena, same way that people often do with horror films. But they stuck around for at least 3 entries, and all of them I think are worthwhile movies. So those are great ones. Now, As Above, So Below is obviously a little more complicated. Like, I couldn't just go shoot that. I don't have French catacombs at my disposal. But that is a fantastic movie. Let's see. Unfriended comes to mind, and Host. Both of those, we actually talk about those 2 movies in particular on the Screen Life episode of Found Footage Finds, because that was the year. Unfriended, well, Host came a couple of years later. But Unfriended, Host, and Open Windows were kind of the 3 films that were the proving ground in the mainstream for Screen Life movies. It showed that you could put famous faces in, like they did. Open Windows was Elijah Wood, and then Unfriended and Host were showing platforms. Like, the idea was you're using specific platforms not just to tell the story, but to actually make the movie in. Like, the people in Host actually went into Zoom. They recorded from different devices, but they were making the movie by sharing a Zoom call, and that's how they shot it. So very, very cool way of making that film. Let's see. Paranormal Activity. So Paranormal Activity and Blair Witch Project, we know the famous stories of those, right? Like the very inexpensive origins. I know a lot about Blair Witch Project because it was made down here by students from UCF. Well, it wasn't made here, it was made in Maryland, but it was made by students from the University of Central Florida, which is a school that I actually went to school at many years after they made the movie. But so, like, it has its origins in the area where I live, so I know a ton about the background of that movie. So that's awesome. Be My Cat, of course. He's I believe Mr. Sofay is in this group and has done a previous live video Q&A. So if you haven't seen it, I think it's linked somewhere in the group, and you can go check out that video Q&A. That's pretty awesome. And Exhibit A you mentioned again, yeah. So James said, what did you use for audio production? Well, I would run and get it, except I don't know where it is right now, and I don't want to take a long time. But for the first film, for Ask, the audio was terrible. For anybody who's watched it on if you've tried to watch it with like fancy speakers, you'll notice that the sound mix is really bad. And that is because I just decided to start shooting one day, and I was just like, I had the old headphones you plug in and it has like a speaker on it, and that's what I used for the audio for every single scene that I shot. And it turns out I had 2 sets of headphones. One was okay, one was absolute garbage. So like half the audio of the movie was terrible. And my friend of mine that helped me with editing had to do a lot of cleaning up to even make it tolerable. So obviously, I would suggest not doing that. But for found footage finds, ultimately what I ended up doing was I ended up getting some wireless lavalier mics, the little ones you can clip on your shirt, but they're wireless. And there's just a little plug that you can get, like a lightning plug or a C plug. It goes into the bottom of the phone, and then they link wirelessly. And then I just used that device. Because you'll notice in found footage finds, you can see the mic. In that case, I'm holding it when I'm walking to do documentary style conversation. So, they have more fancy versions than that, but I think the audio for found footage finds was a leaps and bounds more high quality than it was in Ask. So every film I try to improve the quality of what I'm doing. So, but even what I did on found footage finds was super easy. I think the thing that I bought was $20, and it came with 2 mics and a plug, so you could technically use 2 wireless mics at the same time. So that's what I did. So Dylan Watson said, with no background in acting, how did you end up getting the film on Amazon and Tubi? Okay, well, so that came down to the distributor. Distributor was the one that ended up getting it on there. However, I assume, I haven't asked the distributor this, but my assumption is that they use probably much the same process as I would be for when I distribute found footage finds to the other platforms other than Found TV, which is to go through a place like Film Hub. You know, it's a venue that where you can upload your content and then they will distribute it, or by which I mean not distribute it. They send the information to all of the platforms. Those platforms make considerations about whether or not they want to put the film there. So you don't really, I didn't have the ability to get the film on there. What I had was a distributor who would show them it, and then they would decide if it would go up there. So luckily, it went very quickly to Fossum and then Amazon quickly after that. Obviously, it's on the POV Horror website because they're the distributor. And then I want to say April, sometime in April. The movie came out in October of last year, and it took until April to get onto Tubi. So it took a while to get there. But once it got onto Tubi, that's really where the awareness started to grow. Because as we all know, found footage fans, Tubi is sort of like the go-to place to find found footage films of any kind. You know, go and watch one and then go into the recommend section and you'll just get a ton of good recommendations. So that's how I ended up on Amazon and Tubi, was by working with POV Horror. But hopefully with Found Footage Finds, I'm going to be going through Film Hub, and hopefully we'll end up on those platforms as well that way. So let's see, Paranormal Activity, we mentioned a little bit about that. Obviously that was probably the most successful found footage franchise, just in terms of where it started versus where it ended. He spent $15,000 to make the original film. The series ended up making almost $1 billion worldwide over all the movies. So yeah, the craziest success of all time. Let's see. So James said, if I didn't know any better, I'd say Horror in the High Desert was filmed in my backyard. Yeah, James actually lives in the desert, so that does make sense. I think actually, James, I don't remember. I might have recommended that one to you because you were talking about making a movie, and I was like, when you showed me a picture of where you lived, I was like, oh, this will be massively inspirational. Let's see. Oh, you mentioned Poughkeepsie Tapes, yeah, from the Dowdle brothers. It is an excellent movie. It's super unnerving, and another one that was like not super expensive. The way it was shot is complicated, like complex, but not really high budget, you know. So let's see. Believe Horror in the High Desert was filmed in Nevada. Yeah, I believe that is true. You're right. I think that's true. I know the second one was. I can't remember the first one, but in the second one, they specifically make mention of the stretch of highway in Nevada. So I think you're right. I was watching Demon just now. I haven't seen that one yet. I heard good stuff about it, but I haven't seen it yet. Demon, that one's on my list to get to, but I have not gotten there yet. Let's see. Ash said, good to see you on here today. Hey, Ash, good to see you too. Ash Hamilton is in the chat. It's another fellow filmmaker, director of Holes in the Sky and Final Days, Tales from the End Times. Go check those out. Anthology, found footage film, Tales is Final Days, and then Holes in the Sky is an awesome aliens movie. So check that out if you haven't seen those. James said, perfect, I have those. I'm assuming that's in response to the audio question. Let's see. Fionn said, oh, yeah. So Fionn said, I used Film Hub for Black Daruma. So he did with his previous film what I'm getting ready to do with Found Footage Finds. So, yeah, so that does, obviously it worked for him. I don't even remember where I saw it now. It probably was Found TV, but I'm not sure. But yeah, so it worked for him because he got it on some platforms, so that's awesome. James said Tubi is awesome. 100% agree with that. Filming for my project starts tomorrow. That's fantastic, man. Congratulations, James. I wish you all the luck in the world, and if you need anything, feel free to reach out. I mean, it's a bit of a commute, so I don't know if I can do anything in person, but if there's anything I can do to help you, please feel free to let me know. Let's see. I'm going to see if I want to make sure I didn't miss any questions, and then I'm going to go back to see if there was any questions that were from anybody previous who was on here. Let's see. All right, answered those. Yep, answered those. Oh, any new projects you can talk about? Okay, yes. That's the answer, yes. No, so there are a few projects that I'm working on, but I can't tell you a ton about some of them. I can tell you a little bit about some of them. I told you some about the sequel to Ask. I'm working on the second installment of Ask. I don't know how long that'll run. I think what I'm doing in the second film is a sort of a wild left turn from what anybody might expect for a second film from that series. So my hope is to just keep surprising people with that one. So we'll see how it goes. The second season of Found Footage Finds is sort of sitting on deck, waiting for the thumbs up from me to be made. I really just need to see that the performance goes well on the platform, the platforms that it ends up on. And if it does, then like I said, I'm just going to keep making them forever. So I'm excited about that. And then I have two other projects that I'm working on, both of which I can only tell you a tiny bit about. One is a feature film that is being made in conjunction with a friend of mine. Actually, he was in Ask. If you remember the scene where the guy is doing a consult. He came in because he wanted some advice, and he talks to me, and he immediately recognizes that I'm full of shit. That guy, that's Dan Scully. He's a friend of mine who lives in Philadelphia, and he did me the favor of appearing in that one. So we're working on a project together now. Can't tell you anything about it because it's still in the development processes, and I don't want to jinx it. And plus, he didn't give me permission to talk about it because I didn't ask, so I'm not going to bring it up. And then the other thing I'll tell you is that I have recently been asked potentially to create a segment in an anthology film, which, if it happens, I should know soon, and then I'll be told whether or not I can make mention of it publicly, at which point in time I, of course, will, because I'm very excited about it. But those are the projects that I am currently working on, and as news about any of those comes about, I will absolutely make sure to share any of those things with everybody in the group here. So let's see. Fionn said, do you think found footage is gaining popularity now that Hollywood is not so cool anymore? People craving authentic stories over Marvel, perhaps. So here's the thing. The short answer is yeah, I think that probably is true. But the long answer is I think horror, and I sometimes think of found footage as an extension of it, even though there are found footage and fake doc films that are not horror. But they have always been counter-programming to anything that is big and polished and intended for big audiences. And the reason I like that is because you'll hear sometimes, oh, that horror movie was amazing. How come horror movies never get nominated for awards and never win Oscars and stuff like that? But I think it's important that they don't. I think it's important that we have a genre that is sort of an underdog genre. Like, it's good to have somebody who's willing to continue to break rules and talk about stuff that's uncomfortable to people and make movies with endings that are like disturbing or make you think about it or make you feel confused inside, because that's what art is supposed to do, right? Like, it's supposed to challenge you, it's supposed to entertain you, but it's also supposed to challenge you in some way. The problem sometimes with big tentpole movies is they're being made by companies, they're being made by machines that just want you to keep consuming it. So they don't want to do anything that challenges you. They don't want to do anything that makes you feel like, I wasn't happy with the way they went with that direction, so I'm going to stop watching their stuff. So they end up not being controversial, they end up not being groundbreaking, they end up not really telling stories that hit us in our heart or in our brain or in that lizard part of us, that is still makes decisions based on survival and fear. But horror does all of that stuff. It's the only genre that encourages the creators to try and alienate their audience in some way, or to make them try to think, or to make them feel stuff, very strongly that would be considered negative emotions in some ways. And I love that. So I would say, I think it will always be popular, but it will always be sort of like shadow popular, in the sense that it's not going to be an award-winning genre, but it's hugely successful. Like, look at the most recent Final Destination. It overperformed to a degree everybody was surprised by, I think. And that happens constantly. Horror movies in particular, are so much higher percentage performers than any other genre, because most people don't go to horror movies just because of who the star is or who the filmmaker is or how big a budget they have. They go for the experience they're having. And it's one of the only genres where the genre itself is the star, not anything else. And so, yes, I do agree with you that it's gaining more popularity, but I think a lot of the popularity it's gaining is because of the way people are able to get better access to it now. It was very hard to find found footage movies before, when you were going to video stores to rent it or seeing them in the theaters. But now, through streaming, they can be everywhere. And it's not like you have only a certain number of shelves you can fill up in a Blockbuster, and so found footage wouldn't make the cut. On Tubi, there's no limit to the number of titles that can be up there, So it can sit right alongside any other titles, and then the loyal fans hunt them down and find them. So that's what I would say. Matt asked about my thoughts on Hell House getting away from found footage for the last movie. So I don't know if I might be in the minority on this, but I always salute a filmmaker for trying a thing, even if it's not a success, right? I always say, like, I would rather that you miss the ball trying for a home run than to bunt and just make it to first base every time, right? There's nothing wrong with a movie that's perfectly entertaining and that's it and nothing else. But I like somebody who swings for the fences, I don't know what his plans are for the final Hell House. I actually haven't even seen the trailer yet. I was going to watch it later today. But I know that he went away from found footage for it. And I know some people have said that it feels like a betrayal, but I also think, like, it depends. It depends on what the story is. If there's a story that he can tell that's compelling and that there are elements that don't make sense as a found footage story, like if there's a way where you're getting inside of a character's head, or you're doing massive flashbacks to an era where cameras didn't exist, or he wanted to have some sort of fantastical or internal element where you can't put that on the screen if it's being filmed by a camera, then I understand the decision. Like if the story you're trying to tell is not serviced by the format, I can understand that. However, I also understand people feeling burned by that because Blair Witch Project's second film went out of the found footage arena, and a lot of people got mad about it. Same thing happened with The Last Exorcism, which I thought was a fantastic movie. The second one was terrible, not because it was a traditional narrative, but because it was just not a very good movie. It felt like a cash grab for sure that even this original filmmakers weren't involved in. So I can understand why people would feel burned by it. The only thing I would say is that he's still an indie filmmaker, and he's still working on very small budgets and trying to deliver the best product that he can for the money that he has. So, my thing would be I'm definitely going to check it out because he hasn't let me down on any of the other Hell House movies. So I'm going to check it out, and I'm going to reserve my judgment until I see it. That seems to be the fairest thing to do. If it was backed by Warner Brothers and it was a $30 million project, then I probably would be like, okay, yeah, I think there might be other ulterior motives here. But he's still making it independent, so that's my thoughts on it. Let's see. The massive growth of this group might support the theory of it becoming more popular. Yes, 100%. Again, I think this is another reason why found footage has grown is because the communities that we have, it makes it easier for fellow fans to connect with each other, make more recommendations, and find more good stuff. I spent a long time in quote unquote the wilderness as a found footage fan because I had to find everything I wanted to watch myself. Like nobody was giving me any suggestions, so I just had to look around, and I watched a lot of crap, like a lot of very bad movies, clones and copies and ripoffs of the 3 most popular movies in the last 5 years in found footage, until I found the good ones. But the community has started to grow where we all sort of do that work for each other now. We watch stuff and then we say, this is awesome. Have you seen it? Check it out. Or I was not a fan of this one, but it reminded me of such and such, And we sort of have become our own monitors. It's the reason I created Found Footage Finds, was to try and codify that in a TV show so you guys could have some place to go and feel like other people were doing the same thing you're doing. Let's see. Horror is my favorite, specifically real found footage. However, I have never found one to scare my socks off. So you say specifically real found footage. Now, I don't know if this is going to be controversial. The term found footage actually does have a meaning that has nothing to do with fictional storytelling. Found footage is a real thing where artists used to do it, where they would have festivals where they would just show footage. They called it found footage, which means they didn't make something, they discovered something. They found a VHS tape at a yard sale, or they bought a reel of 8mm film from a thrift store, and then they would show it, and it would be footage of the craziest stuff because it might be somebody's home movie, or it might be commercials taped off of television in the middle of the night. That is what was called found footage. That's actually where the term comes from, because the term found is the idea of an artist finding something and turning it into something else by displaying it. So when you say real found footage, I don't think that's probably what you're talking about. What I'm describing, I think you mean like found footage horror in the fictional horror sense. But found footage is a whole other thing. The original term came from a whole other place. And it's actually very cool. I think there's a thing called the Found Footage Festival every year where they just show interesting, weird stuff. Like somebody brings in an exercise video from 1982 when people first started making, VHS exercise videos, and that'll screen there, sort of like Mystery Science Theater 3000 style, where they satirically, poke fun, loving fun at all this weird crap that they're screening. I disagree with you in the sense that, not disagree with you, I feel differently in that I have definitely had movies that scared me. But I also think the term scare is tricky when we talk about horror movies, right? Because there are probably not movies that made me jump, but there are definitely movies that have haunted me for a long time after I stopped watching them. Like I don't stop thinking about them. I don't stop thinking of the dark ramifications of the things that they talked about, or what might have happened just out of the frame, and what that means. In fact, I would argue my movie is not scary at all. Ask is not really a frightening movie in the sense of anything that happens on the screen, except for maybe the thing with the teeth in the last 5 minutes. Some people are that gets them on edge a little bit. But the movie itself is not scary. However, some of the stuff that we talk about in the movie, the idea of losing your identity, the idea of trying very hard to be remembered only to know that the second that you're gone, you'll be forgotten, that the world will continue on without you, and you don't know if anybody's going to remember you, if you made any kind of an impact. Those are real fears that we have that aren't just about scares in a movie. Those are genuine, deep-seated fears that human beings have about their lives. I have seen movies that have scared me in that way. Psychologically, have definitely messed with my brain to a certain degree. So I think it really just depends on how invested you are in any movie, what it is that they're saying, and whether it connects with you. And then sometimes that can be the thing that makes a movie scary to me. Like, I've definitely been scared by an artificial jump scare. I think everybody has been caught by those. Even those of us who say that we've seen every movie in the world, occasionally you'll find a jump scare that catches you. But for me, the more powerful thing is finding something that sort of burrows under your skin and makes you think about it a lot, makes you sort of uncomfortable upon revisiting that idea, or even like kind of sometimes not wanting to think about that idea. It unnerves you a bit. That's the stuff that's really effective for me. Fiona Watts said 80s exercise found footage, new subgenre, loving it. No joke, I am obsessed with I love movies that take the shape of like nostalgic looks at old things. If anybody here has ever seen the movie WNUF Halloween Special, the whole thing is shot like it was an old VHS recording of a broadcast from, I want to see, either like the late 80s or the early 90s, and it's just a taping of a Halloween special from a local cable access channel. And it even has like, it's got tracking lines from the VHS tape being so old, and there's commercials still in it from the era. So like, it's got those safety cutters for carving pumpkins and stuff like that, and it's got like promos for these weird local, talk shows and stuff like that. But it was all created. None of it is real stuff. It's all been designed with the intent to look like something that came from the 80s. But they designed it, and I think they made the movie for like $800 or something like that. But I definitely would recommend you hunting it down. It's called WNUF Halloween Special. It's kind of got a similar vibe to like Ghost Watch, or one of those where it's like a live broadcast of a thing happening and then maybe some supernatural circumstances pop up in the midst of it. But I love that kind of stuff. So the fact that you mentioned the 80s exercise found footage videos is really funny to me. I would definitely do something like that. So James said, Horror in the High Desert did that for me. Same camera as I have for ghost hunting. You mean the movie was shot with the same camera that you do ghost hunting with? That's very cool. That's also, I would imagine, super inspiring, right? I'm trying to remember what movie it was that I watched. Oh, you know what it was? It was called, I think it was either called To Jennifer or For Jennifer. I can't remember which is the first one. I think it's To Jennifer is the first one in the Jennifer series. That movie was a found footage film. I didn't love the movie. I liked it. I didn't love it. But what I loved about it was that the entire thing was shot on an iPhone, and it was shot as if it was on an iPhone. It wasn't someone shooting on an iPhone and pretending that it was like a high quality, glossy Hollywood film. It was being shot as if a dude picked up his phone with the intent to shoot footage. And it was directed by James Cullen Bressick, I think. He's made a couple of found footage films. He made Hate Crime as well, which is a pretty tough watch. But To Jennifer is super inspiring because like he just took a phone and he found things that were happening in his life and people that were around him, and he made a whole film out of it that ended up turning actually into a whole franchise. There's like 4 entries, I think, in that series. There's To Jennifer, then there's the number, it's like T.O. Jennifer, then there's the number 2 Jennifer, then there's For Jennifer, From Jennifer, something like that. So he ended up making the world's least expensive found footage movie on his phone, and it turned into a franchise, which is awesome. I'm also kind of obsessed with found footage franchises too. I love the idea that because they're so inexpensive, found footage franchises actually pop up pretty quickly, can pop up pretty quickly, because they don't have to make a huge amount of money in order for it to be worth going back and making another one. Joseph, I agree with you. Joseph Greer said, I'd love to see your name in a VHS anthology. From your lips to God's ears, Joseph. That is not, I'll be honest, that is not the anthology series I was talking about. It's another very awesome filmmaker and concept. But I mean, I'd be insane not to want to work on a VHS film. That would be amazing. Some of my favorite found footage stories have been in the VHS franchise, because the cool thing about that series is they get big names who want to take big swings, and they give them a little bit of money, but then they don't give them any rules, basically. They're just like, here's the little bit of money you get, but for that little bit of money, just go crazy. Do whatever you want. And that's awesome. Like the segment that Eduardo Sanchez directed, the Blair Witch director, he did a zombie segment in that movie where he's wearing a GoPro on his helmet, and then he ends up getting bitten and becoming a zombie, and so you're seeing the entire thing sort of first person through the eyes of a zombie attacking other people. Amazing segment. What a great idea. And there's several. I would argue that every single VHS movie has at least two fantastic segments in it, which is saying something because there's a ton of anthology movies where like one is good and the rest of them are fine. You know, you salute the effort, but maybe not the best work. You know, but like to have the series that ran for this long and to have that many good segments is pretty impressive. Um, oh, hey, Found TV is in the house. Take a bow, Found TV. So I mentioned this way earlier when I first started, before everybody was on. But if you're not watching stuff on Found TV, uh, keep all your other platforms. Obviously, you can get stuff from everywhere. But if you don't have Found TV, get Found TV because first of all, they have a free version of it. It's just ad supported, same way as Tubi is. But it's a fantastic platform. And the thing I like about it is that they and I think Louis and Monica Lavelle are the people that run it. They'll tell you this. They have titles on there that don't go anyplace else. Like that, sometimes Tubi is just like, we don't see the audience for this, or this is not quote unquote high quality enough. Amazon does that a lot. There's a ton of stuff you can't get onto Amazon. But even sometimes on Tubi you can't get stuff on there as well. Well, Found TV, they want to put found footage movies on there. Like their goal is to just have found footage movies get to audiences. So you'll find stuff on there that you won't find anyplace else, and they're really supportive of the filmmakers. They're starting to make originals now. So there's all kinds of really cool stuff happening over there. So if you don't already have it, you should definitely get it. So pretty awesome. Let's see. Oh, I wanted to mention again, I mentioned it right at the very beginning. I don't know if there's anybody on here that is in the Houston area, or if you know any found footage fans that are in the Houston area. But there is a very cool opportunity to be able to go see Ask on the big screen in Houston later this month. June 21st, the movie is screening at the historic River Oaks Theater in Houston, Saturday, June 21st. It's a late night showing, but it's playing there. And the cool thing about it is, the producer's going to be there. Preston Fossil, who is the producer of the movie, is going to be there. He's going to answer questions and talk to people and stuff. I'm shooting a special introduction for the movie that you'll only be able to see. It's specifically for Houston, so even if it plays somewhere else, nobody else will ever see that introduction. And then the coolest thing, I think, is anybody who's there for that screening, Preston is going to be shooting behind-the-scenes footage of the screening, of the audience members, and there is the very real possibility that if you are there, you will end up in either some B-roll or possibly even some like footage with dialogue, like with him talking to you, interviewing you or whatever, that could end up in the second Ask film, because that's the reason that we're shooting the footage there, is to end up in the second Ask movie. So I think it's awesome. I think it's a way for me to be able to connect with the audiences that like the movies, because found footage movies don't, by and large, screen in theaters a lot. We mostly see them at home and we see them by ourselves. So this is a cool opportunity to be able to connect with audiences. And this is a dream come true for me to have the movie play on the big screen. So very cool thing for me. But I'm also super nervous about the fact that like 6 people are going to show up. Hopefully that doesn't happen. But so if you know anybody in the Houston area, please, if friends, family members, anybody, please recommend the movie to them. And if anybody sounds interested, just hit me up in the group. I can send you the link to it. I'll share it on another post in the group. But it's gonna be awesome. And we may end up trying to do a screening in Philadelphia and in Florida as well. We're gonna try and have a few screenings across the country. So let's see. Oh yeah, Fionn, that's right. So I think Fionn was right that was where I first saw Black Daruma, because he said Found TV were the first guys to pick up Black Daruma. Which I'm assuming, because I saw it right when they first started talking about it, so I must have seen it on Found. But yeah, they're the early adopters on everything that they can be. They're also super cool in the sense that they don't lock you down, like, you can only have your film air here and we don't want you to put it anywhere else. They're really supportive about helping raise your platform without trying to block you from being able to get the word out anyplace else. So super, super awesome stuff. Let's see. Anybody else have any? We're talking a lot about we've talked a lot about my movie. Do you mind if I ask, is there anybody who's in here? Have you guys seen Found Footage Finds yet? The 2 episodes that have been released. We did the first episode was Bigfoot, which was a lot of fun. And by the way, a fellow member of the group, Dylan Brown, the director of Tahoe Joe, appeared on an episode on the Bigfoot episode. He was super awesome. In fact, in his filmmaker interview segment, he does one of his clips. He's standing right next to the Tahoe Joe costume. Like, so it's just like sitting on the desk next to him. So he's talking, and you get to see what Tahoe Joe looks like when it's just like not where there's no person in it, when it's just a costume. But anyway, so that was the first episode, was Bigfoot, and then the second episode was Screen Life, which I know we talked a little bit about earlier, some Screen Life movies, but those are the two episodes that have been released so far. Okay, Sarah said that she has seen it. David said, I've not seen it. You said I can find it on Found TV? Yes. So for anybody who's watching this, if you haven't seen it yet, the only place for all of June that you will be able to see the show is on Found TV. When I talked to Louie and Monica, I was like, how about we just do an exclusive where the only place they can see it for the weeks of their premieres will be here on Found TV. And it'll eventually, work its way out to other platforms, but let's do it with you first, because it was the perfect pairing, right? Like, who better to do a show about found footage movies than a place literally called Found, So yeah, so that's the only place you can find it right now. So the 2 episodes that are out now, and then each of the next 3 Wednesdays in June will be a new episode, and then that all the episodes will have been released. All 5 will have been released just exclusively first on Found TV. So Jeff said he has seen them. Thank you, Jeff, for checking those out. I appreciate it. And Sarah said, cool concept. I love how you have fan suggestions too. Yeah, that was a big thing for me. I knew that I wanted to have, in every episode, I wanted to have at least one suggestion from a person who was not a filmmaker and wasn't necessarily a quote-unquote expert, but was a super fan, like somebody who just really loved this subgenre of movies. So in the first episode in Bigfoot, we have a guy who recommends a movie called Uwari, which actually was cool because he lives right near the actual Uwari National Park, so like it sort of hit close to home for him. And then for Screen Life, we actually had Mike and Serial, who I believe he might be in this group, but he hosts a really amazing YouTube show called Voices from the Mausoleum. He's a co-host with Angel, where they talk about found footage movies every Friday, and he did a recommendation on there. So there's a lot of cool people that pop up on there. Either they're experts or super fans or whatever, but the goal of the show was to connect all of the different groups of people who love found footage stuff, because it's one of the only film communities where the people who like watching the stuff can and do connect directly with the people who create it. It doesn't really happen. Like I can't just go online and look up the guy who, made last week's episode of CSI, like he's not just out there having chats with people. But that does happen with found footage movies. So I thought it was very cool thing to be able to connect fans and filmmakers together and get recommendations from both parties and all that kind of stuff. So, oh, hey, Bill Howard. Thank you. I appreciate it. He said this is a great idea. So Bill Howard, if you have not seen it, you probably have at this point, because I think everybody has watched this, but he directed a film called Something Walks in the Woods, which is a very cool, just go look at the trailer if you haven't seen it. Something Walks in the Woods. I saw it on Tubi, but it's a very cool slow burn, like paranormal investigation kind of Blackwell ghost vibe type of thing. So if that is your speed, you will absolutely love that. I also made a movie called Urbex, which I think you can get on Found TV currently. So, but yeah, very cool guy. Bill was the person that steered me towards Film Hub to be able to put my own stuff out, because I had no idea how I was going to put the next projects out. I was probably just going to take it back to distributors, and he was like, you can do that stuff yourself. So hugely helpful. So I really appreciate all the help that you've given me, Bill. Jeff Lindenberger said, I dig the recommends portion. Yeah, so it's interesting because originally I thought this was going to be a very short show. It'd be like a 15-minute show, and I was just going to recommend like 10, here's 10 movies from this genre. I hope you enjoy them. But then I started to realize I want to take the genre seriously, so I want to divide it. I'm absolutely going to have a recommendations portion, and I did sort of split into 2 pieces. The first piece was, here are the 3 more well-known titles that you've probably heard of, but if you haven't, check them out. And then 5 of like the more obscure titles that you may not have heard of, and they're definitely worth finding. But then I also realized the other thing that I'm interested in about found footage, and I hope that you guys would be too, is context about the history and the philosophy and the psychology of found footage movies, right? So like when I talk about the Bigfoot episode, I started with a piece of footage that they call it the Patterson-Gimlin footage. The guys, that very famous piece of footage of the Bigfoot walking in the woods like this, blurry, the 16 millimeter film. I started talking about that because it's important, because it's the first piece of Bigfoot media that people knew about, but also it looks aesthetically like all found footage movies look. And I wanted to talk about the idea that in some ways that piece of Bigfoot footage, whether it's real or it's fake, ended up being an influence on the entire history of found footage filmmaking, because people who made movies made it to look like that piece of footage because they wanted it to feel real, you know? And so in a way, this one little 1.5 minute piece of footage was hugely influential on the history of found footage filmmaking. So that kind of stuff to me is super cool. Like, I'm really interested in that stuff and I want to share it. So yes, the recommendations were really important to me, but then also so was like the history and the framework of, you know, where the genre comes from and everything. So James, no, the movie, you said Something in the Woods. The title is Something Walks in the Woods, I believe, is the full title. David said, love the Blackwell Ghost. Can't wait for number 9. Yeah, the Blackwell Ghost is an amazing idea. It's an amazing success story for the director, because he had made a couple of films. I think he made a zombie movie and something else. But then when he made the first Blackwell Ghost, I'll be honest, I don't know. He obviously wanted it to be successful. I don't know that he ever expected that it would take on the level of popularity that it's taken on, to the degree that he's now, you know, almost 10 movies deep and, you know, a huge following for it. Similar to the way that Bad Ben happened, you know, where I think it just caught on. People were really surprised that, you know, a movie that is essentially one guy could grow and be so compelling and so interesting and stuff. And he's really interesting because he's very, I don't want to say he's like shy, but you don't really see him out talking. He doesn't do a lot of publicity. He doesn't do a lot of appearances and stuff. But Blackwell Ghost has like a really incredible following within the community, similar to like a lot of the people that love studying the Blair Witch Project lore and that sort of stuff. I think a similar thing happens with Blackwell Ghost and not as much to Bad Ben, but that one, I think that one was just, it hit at the right time when Amazon was paying better for screening than they do now. But yeah, Blackwell Ghost is a crazy huge success. Sorry, I'm going to take a drink real quick. Sorry. Let's see. Yeah, so Bill said, yeah, he said Blackwell Ghost was the inspiration for Something Walks in the Woods, which makes sense, because there's a very similar sort of like the framework of it, you know, which is like the single filmmaker central figure looking into an investigation. He also said BG9 is coming very soon, so Blackwell Ghost coming very soon, and we'll get back into the ghost story. So David said I've tried to reach out to him via email. You and me both, David. Obviously, he was one of the first people I tried to contact when I started planning for season 2 to do paranormal investigation as a potential episode. I tried to reach out to him too. Have not heard back from him yet. Fiona said, I can't wait to watch Tahoe Joe and the other Bigfoot recommendations. Yep, Tahoe Joe is awesome, and they're shooting, again, Dylan is in this group, so feel free to reach out to him, but Dylan Brown and his team might have just finished or are almost finished shooting the trilogy capper. They're shooting the third one now. I think it's like Bigfoot in the City kind of vibe, you know, like a concrete jungle or something, but it sounds pretty cool. It sounds like a really interesting direction to take the series. Fiona said, I've always been mega intrigued by mythical creatures, especially Loch Ness. Do you have a personal favorite subgenre of found footage? Haunted house is one of mine, and highly contained paranormal or psychological stories with a few characters involved. Okay, so there's a couple of pieces here. Always been intrigued by mythical creatures, especially Loch Ness. 100% agree. The reason I started the found footage finds with the episode about Bigfoot is because I love urban legends and you know, creepypastas and stuff like that, because I love the idea that, and maybe most people don't think about it in these terms, but so much about urban legends is about storytelling itself, just real world storytelling, right? Most of us have never seen Bigfoot. It's possible no one has ever seen Bigfoot, because it's possible it doesn't exist. But the stories that we told about it are so compelling. Not only the individual stories, but the overall idea that it exists is so compelling that we just decided to make it a reality in our storytelling, even if it's not a reality in the world. Like, we've all just agreed that Bigfoot is a thing worth having in existence because it's an interesting idea, even if it might not be real. You know, that's kind of what cryptozoology is the theory of things for which we have no clear physical evidence. So I agree with you. I'm fascinated by it because I love the idea of furthering that agreed upon fictional narrative in a framework that still looks real in found footage. So I'm absolutely obsessed with that. As far as personal favorite subgenre of found footage, So this is not really a subgenre, but there is a certain kind of found footage movie that I love, which is that I love when found footage movies try to do something really weird and off the beaten path that sometimes maybe doesn't even work, but it's like a big weird swing. Um, Without spoiling the end of the movie, I don't know, have any of you here ever seen the movie Mr. Jones? If you haven't seen it, it's a movie about a husband and wife. He's like he's trying to be a filmmaker, and he has his film equipment. They go out to stay in the cabin in the middle of the woods, and he can't figure out what he wants to make a movie about. And then he stumbles across some crazy like outsider art fashioned from like sticks and twigs and garbage and stuff. And he becomes obsessed with figuring out who this outsider artist is, and he finds out that he's actually this dude named Mr. Jones who used to send these crazy statues to museums and art galleries and stuff in the 70s, and he starts investigating that. Well, that's the opening of the film. That's the first 30 to 40 minutes setup of the story. Where it goes from there is utterly wild. It can't be explained, and even if I could, I wouldn't want to spoil it for you because I think where it goes is really interesting. But my favorite kinds of found footage movies are the ones that try to stretch the boundaries of what has been done or can be done in found footage movies. I'll give you an example. There was a movie, this is one I can kind of spoil what the thing is. It's a movie called Invasion, or sometimes it's called Infection, and it was released in the 2005 maybe? I think I want to say something like that. But so the whole film is shot from the dash cam of, or maybe not the dash cam, but it's a camera from inside the car for, I forget if he's a police officer or maybe he's like a guy that works, was it like a park ranger or something? But he's driving when a meteor hits out in the middle of nowhere, sort of like in a national park. He goes driving out to investigate it, and then there are some alien goings on. We'll just put it that way. Something that's like jumping from person to person, like an alien presence. But the entire thing, aside from 1 minute at the beginning and 1 minute at the end, that's like a capper. The entire thing is in one unbroken take from one stationary camera pointed out the front of a car, so that all you're seeing is sort of the front seat of the car, the hood, and then anything that's out front of the windshield. Now, I'm going to warn you before you go watch the movie. There are passages of it that are pretty boring because there's like he's driving and nothing's happening except he's talking on a walkie-talkie or whatever. But it's a really interesting movie because it's the first time I'd ever seen a movie that had a single shot uninterrupted, a single camera that was unmoving, and a story where all the action had to take place in front of a camera that was never going to turn to catch the action. And I thought it was really clever that the filmmaker actually did this. It's kind of a well-known filmmaker, actually. He's the guy that directed the old straight-to-video version of Captain America, and he directed a movie called Cyborg. He passed away, unfortunately, I think last year. But it's a really clever, crazy movie, and it's definitely worth checking out. So, but like that's the kind of stuff that I love. I love that more than I like all subgenres, but when some movie is just trying something really interesting and crazy, that's the stuff that I love the most. Where it's like, oh man, that probably shouldn't have worked, but it did. Or if it didn't work, it was like, God bless you for trying that absolute insanity. So David said, I'm starting to do paranormal investigations right here in Florida. Oh, where in Florida are you doing investigations, David? You got to let me know if that's anywhere nearby. I'm gonna find you and I'm going to pretend to haunt you during one of your investigations. I'm kidding. I'm not going to do that. I would never do that. I would never secretly hide cameras that watched you get scared by me during one of your paranormal investigations. I would never do that. Let's see what Bill said. For those that haven't watched Ask, it is very different than other FF films and I highly recommend it. Make sure to stay through the whole film. Okay, well, I was not going to endorse my own work to that particular to that level, but I appreciate Bill saying it so that I could just read it, and I still look humble, like I wasn't bragging about my movie. But thank you, Bill. That was very kind. I really appreciate that. All right, James. I'll see you later, man. He said I'm going to duck out. I have a birthday party to go to. I get it. I would go to something else other than listening to Me Too. I'm not hurt. By the way, I'm not endorsing Wendy's here. This is just the place that was closest to me where I could go get a Diet Dr. Pepper. So, but yeah, I agree with Bill in one sense about my movie, which is that Ask is very different than other found footage films, and that's absolutely intentional. I had a couple of things I knew I wanted to do with the movie. The first one was I don't want the movie to be dark, like not like emotionally dark. I mean, like I don't want it to be dark. I don't want it to take place at night and there just to be a bunch of footage where you can't see what's going on. It was very important to me to like have you be able to see most of everything that happened. In fact, in the final final moments of the film, arguably the most horrifying thing that happens to him, and then the craziest mystery thing that happens to him, happens in broad daylight. And it was important to me because I was like, I haven't really seen that. That's not something that happens a lot in found footage. It either the camera falls over and you don't see what happened, or it happened in the dark, or somebody gets pulled into a shadow, or we never quite get the payoff of what it is that we thought was going on. Now, can argue whether or not the narrative payoff is there in my story, because I do leave some mystery intentionally, but it was important to me to do a film that was extremely different from other found footage movies, just to try and see if I could do it. Like what I mentioned with Fion's question about, I like big swings. And so I just tried to make a big swing. I didn't have much money to spend, so I knew I just wanted to try something interesting and weird. David said, I live in Fort Myers and have several locations, mainly abandoned prisons within a few hours and also some houses. Okay, so that's awesome. Fort Myers is a little bit of a drive for me. I live in the Orlando area, but that is absolutely worth driving to. That is awesome. Bill said, I'll be in Florida for the weekend of the 20th filming for my docu-series. We could have a meetup of some filmmakers and found footage fans. That's awesome. That would be very cool. That is one of the things I do want to say about this group. For all of you who are here, obviously you're members of the group already. I hope anytime you talk to somebody who is a found footage fan, or even if they're not quote-unquote found footage fans, but if they watched a couple of horror movies that are found footage and they really like them, I would hope that you invite them to this group, as without trying to be jerks about it, but get as many people as you can into this group. Obviously, 500,000 people is a pretty impressive number for this group, but the reason I encourage everybody to join this group, or any group really, is because I mentioned earlier, found footage filmmaking, so much of our experience is spent alone. In the experience we have of watching the movies. We often watch them streaming at home. Maybe we watch it with a spouse or a friend, but a lot of the time we're watching it, late at night or middle of the day. We're watching a movie by ourselves, and it's awesome. The experience of it can be really powerful, but at the same time, it also can be sort of limiting, you don't get to go and have the theatrical experience that other people have when they get to go see a big action movie, or, even a much more mainstream horror film, like an M. Night Shyamalan movie or something. We don't really get to have that experience. So that's one of the things I like about this group, is it allows us to have that connection that we don't otherwise get, So if there's anybody that likes it at all, encourage them to join this group, because the other thing it does that's good is it helps to encourage them to watch other stuff they haven't seen. Maybe they saw Blair Witch Project, Paranormal Activity, Poughkeepsie Tapes, and As Above, So Below, and that's all they've ever seen, but they like them. Help them, because they might go looking on their own, and as I did early on, I could have been easily discouraged by some of the very bad found footage movies I found, just sort of really low budget throwaway movies that nobody was trying very hard. They just thought, I could shoot this in a weekend, and you see enough of those, you get really discouraged, and then you don't want to keep exploring. So the cool thing about this group is you join this group, recommendations pop up, you go look for movies that other people are talking about and liking, and then you not only have the emotional connection, the human connection with people, but then you're getting recommendations for movies that have a higher chance of being better because someone's recommended them to you, So that's the best way to grow the audience, and then that also is helpful to filmmakers like me and Bill and and Fiona and all of us who make movies. The more people that are interested in found footage films, the more people are likely to watch our stuff. The way that we make money for the most part is by people going to the platforms and watching them on streaming, whether it's a $2.99 rental or whether it's watching it on Tubi with ads. That's how we make most of our money. So word of mouth from found footage fans is the best thing in the world for us. That's the way that we can continue to make enough money to keep putting movies out. So David said, are you in the chat group? I don't know if you're referring to me or if you're referring to Bill. I think I am. I'll be honest, this is one of only 2 Facebook groups I'm even a member of, because I don't, other than these groups, I don't really do much on Facebook other than advertising. So I think I am. I'll check if I'm in the chat group or not. But maybe you're talking to Bill, I'm not sure. But so we're about 5-6 minutes out from 4:30 my time, which is, I was going to go 90 minutes today unless I just had a ton more questions to address. So I've got a few more minutes. If there's any last questions that you guys want to address, I'm just going to scroll back through real quick and make sure that there were no questions that I missed. And if you have any more last minute questions before I start to wrap out, feel free to just drop them in the chat below, and I will definitely get to them. But I just want to make sure I didn't miss anybody. Urbex was awesome. Jeff, you are correct. That movie is awesome. That's another one from Bill Howard that is on Found TV. The thing I like about that one is it's one of the few times I've seen a movie where the person that's filming is almost never on camera. It's like a, I don't know what you call it, like it's almost like a third, it's like a first person or like a POV, but with a camera. It's not supposed to be through his eyes, it's through a camera. But like almost the whole film is just what he's looking at with the camera. I think you see him like 2 or 3 shots really quickly. But I think it's a really cool concept because the star of the movie is this amazing sort of abandoned building location. So definitely worth checking out. Let's see. Oh, I missed this one, Sarah. I'm sorry, it's way up here. How would a fan input a suggestion in a possible future series? So when/if I end up getting the ability to do season 2, I'll do the same thing I did last time, but I think just people didn't know what it was last time and so maybe didn't respond. But I normally put a call out and I'll say, here are 5, or maybe I might throw you guys off by like picking 7 or 8, just so you don't know which ones I'm going to do, because I might pick a few from later seasons. But what I'm going to do is I'm just going to put a call out and say, do you want to make any recommendations for such and such genre? If so, and then I send you a link, and it just shows you the information you have to fill out. You got to like put in your name. You have to give me permission, because I can't legally put footage from someone in a movie unless they're willing to share their legal name with me and all that kind of stuff. Like, it's just legalities. But you just put this info in, and then basically you would record your video on your phone, and then I have a link for where you can send. You just drop the link for, to share it, how you would put it in a Google Drive or something like that, and then I download the link and I put it in the episode. Now I have a suspicion that season 2 I will get a lot more entries than I did for season 1, because people know what it is. So I might not be able to use everyone's, but I will definitely try to use as many as I possibly can in the episodes. So that is how I'm going to do it. I'm going to put the word out, so you don't have to worry. You will definitely get a notification that it's happening here. But that's how you would do it. When I mention it, you just if you have a suggestion, you can record the suggestion and send it along. And as long as I've got the room for the segments, I'll put them in the episode. And sometimes I didn't even tell the people. They didn't know that they were going to get in. They just submitted something, and then they found out when their episode aired this season. So, yeah, so it could be a surprise. You never know. Okay, David, you were referring to me. All right, I'll check and see if I'm in the chat group. If I'm not, I will definitely join it. Let's see. I don't see any other questions that I missed in here. Let me just check my phone again real quick. And then I just want to say just one last time, and I promise I won't keep trying to sell you guys on stuff, but so the 3 things that I'm peddling, found footage finds, the rest of the month of June, you can check out episodes. Starting this Wednesday, Zombies. The following Wednesday is Into the Woods. And the last one of the month is reality TV and newscasts. So we've got 3 more episodes coming. And then obviously Ask. If you have seen it, thank you for watching it. If you have not seen it, you can check it out on to stream on Fossum or on Tubi, or you can rent it on Amazon or POV Horror. And the last thing, obviously, I would ask anybody, if you guys haven't done it, one of the things that is hugely helpful, not just to me, but to any filmmaker who's making anything, is if you like what they made, go over to, like for Found Footage Finds, if you go over to Letterboxd and give the show a good review, that would be fantastic. If you like the movie Ask, go over to Letterboxd and leave a good review there, because found footage fans trust other found footage fans more than they trust anything else. So that's like, it's worth its weight in gold. A good review from you guys is worth its weight in gold. So if you want to support filmmakers and you liked their movie, go over and leave them a great review on Letterboxd or IMDb, because that makes a huge impact. And then the last thing, like I said, anybody in the Houston area, if you know somebody in the Houston area that would like to go and have a cool time and maybe possibly end up in the background of a found footage movie, let them know that Ask is screening on Saturday, July 21st. And yeah, they might end up in the sequel to the movie that they're going there to watch. So that'd be pretty cool. Thank you, Fiona. I appreciate it. He said, your enthusiasm for the genre is infectious. Keep up the good work. I love the genre. It's my favorite genre of all time, and I'm glad that it's infectious. I appreciate you thinking the work is good. I will attempt to try and keep it up to some level of quality. Same to you, Found TV. Thank you as well for putting out the show and for all the support that you've given to all the filmmakers that you're supporting. So if you guys need anything, I'm gonna, even though the video is over, if anybody watches this later and they have more questions, you can feel free. I'm talking to you who are watching this in the future now. If you have any questions, you can feel free to put them in the comments. If you just tag my name in the comments, I will make sure to reply to your questions there as well. So just don't want you to feel left out because you couldn't make it to the live. So Thank you guys so much for coming. I really appreciate it. I had a fantastic time. And yeah, I'm in the group. You know how to find me now, so feel free to reach out if there's anything that you need. I will talk to you again soon.